Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance for an episode where I want to talk about Wayne Rooney, what he's like as a manager, the situation around him leaving, and also what he should be doing next. I think one of the main reasons why I've been interested in football, I think, is because of managers. It's such an interesting and difficult job and unique really from everything else. And that's why I've also had a bit of a fascination specifically with Wayne Rooney and his transition recently into a manager. For me, at first, he never really came across to me as someone that could actually really be a manager. If I had to give a reason as to why that was, I think it's because just from the outside, it seemed like he was a person that didn't quite have that emotional intelligence for other people or really have that awareness of himself and how he worked. But really, he's proven to be, quite the opposite of that. And I know that because I've got a lot of insights into how Rooney has worked as a manager from my dad. And a lot of that you've seen discussions of when we talked about Derby before. And from what I gathered, it wasn't so much about tactical work with Rooney, where he had a lot of backroom staff that would cover that, including Liam Rossini. For Rooney, I don't think that was really his strength. I think at the time, if I remember right, about a year ago, he was still making his way through his coaching badges. So that aspect of management wasn't really his area. What his area was what I would say is probably the most important aspect of management, and that is really everything else outside of the technical and the tactical. The strange thing about Rooney, and I think it's what really intrigues me to him as a manager, is that despite his ignoring of psychology, and I don't think he really has that belief in it, I think a lot of his strengths in his management actually come from that, his relation with people and the psychology of people, the motivation of the people around him. That's really where his strength lies. Because really his first strength that Rooney had going into management was the respect that he had from his playing career. I mean, many ex-players that become managers can lose that respect very quickly. So I believe he maintained that. It is through his main value of honesty and how he would talk directly with players, with staff, saying exactly what he wanted with, I think Dad would say it, often brutal honesty in terms of, yes, I need you, no, I don't need you, I need you to do this job, and really communicating that vision, that direct message of this is what we're going to do. That might sound like a really small, simple thing that you imagine a lot of managers do, but that's not really the case. It's quite a difficult thing to do, to keep a simple message, an honest message, the entire time while you're in that hot seat. And that is definitely a talent that Rooney has. Another strength of his, I'd say, was his confidence and his bravery in taking risks, picking players, picking a team, and then executing that fully. But also with that confidence, he had that ability to learn from his mistakes. So he'd take lessons from his first season and he adapted his plan going into the next and improving the team further. Indecision from managers, it's an absolute killer. I think having that lack of confidence in the decision that you're making or taking too long to make that decision, I think when you see that doubt in a manager, players, staff pick up on that, and that's when the cracks begin to show. What else also Rooney has is, like I touched on before, that awareness of himself, what he could do and what he couldn't do, and in that, utilising the staff around him. I think more and more a manager and their job is about being a funnel for the people around him or her to take their ideas and then break that down into one solid, cohesive, day-to-day plan. And that's something that Rooney did incredibly well in terms of utilising Liam Rossini around him and staff like that, taking all that on board and creating one cohesive plan for Derby County. And doing that takes incredible self-awareness to know that you can't do those things, and that if you were to do those things yourself, it would go wrong. So to identify those weaknesses in yourself is absolutely key for management, and key, I think, for Rooney's management as well. One trait that Rooney does have that defines him more so than any other manager is his ability to utilise emotion and create narrative. So for example, at Derby County, he carved out quite a simple narrative whereby the players were simply the protagonists and the antagonists were clearly the poor ownership and the problems that the club were facing, the obstacles being the point deductions and everything like that. From that is that simple narrative that brought motivation from the team, and ultimately made those players want to work for him, which is a great trait to have, and it's one of the hardest things to get. Is it's not just players having to play for you, it's them wanting to do it, and that comes from story and emotion and a manager utilising that. So there was a number of traits there that Rooney had that really made him a success at Derby County. One of those was his honesty, and with that the trust he got from players. Another is his confidence and his ability to be straightforward in his execution. There was also knowing his strengths and utilising those around him to fill those weaknesses that he had. And most importantly, I think, his ability to create that narrative around situations. And all those traits fed into a troubling situation and really sustained the team and the club for a long period of time. But despite that, the club still faced problems, ultimately to an extent where Rooney is now left. And to be honest, I could go into why it looks like that's happened, but it's also a really complicated situation just looking at it from the outside. I'm nowhere near an expert in any of that that's going on, so I don't know what really to say about it. I'm sort of disappointed. I was hoping he would stay on. I think in terms of the football side of things, it was a good fit for him, and he could go up from League One and to the Championship and further. However, I also understand that with the club being within the mess that it's in and being so close to the start of pre-season with I think only 5 players available, I do understand why that would be the point at which you'd say, I've had enough of this. To be honest, I think the whole situation needs a proper and thorough investigation before we can start making judgments about what is the right or wrong decision for Rooney in that case. I think, though, 2 things for me are quite clear. It's one, that clubs should never really be put in that situation in the first place. Fans should never face the possibility of losing their club entirely. Yes, they can go down divisions, as many divisions as they want, but I think clubs should always still exist. I think from a psychological point of view, how much people depend on these clubs and depend on football and depend on the togetherness of the community as well within that, I think it's important that we put things in place that mean that these clubs can always be sustained in some way or another. And my second point on that is, yes, the club has found themselves in this situation, that's one thing, but another is that it should never be allowed to drag on for the amount of time it has been, for a club to be hanging in the balance in the way that it is, and the effect that has on fans and people that look up to this club and depend on this club being held in this sort of limbo, I don't think is right, and there needs to be better processes in place to deal with these situations that are happening that may again happen in the future with other clubs. But that was me going on a bit of a tangent there, because ultimately Rooney has left, and the question is, what is he going to do next? What is the best move for him really in his career in management? Like I said, he has these great qualities that now need to be translated over to another club, and my concern is that the qualities that he does have are really best suited for that specific situation of a club being in a crisis. I remember hearing from Rooney once, I can't remember where it was, that he felt he had this strength in that he was able to keep a level head and keep good judgment and keep calm during what would be absolute chaos around him. And that was Derby County, really. It suited his strength to a T. So I think he should be patient again in waiting for an opportunity that suits that specific strength. Those 2 main strengths are, for me, that ability to build narrative and also having that surrounding supporting staff that fill in the weaknesses that he has as a manager. So in terms of narrative, can you take over a narrative like that again in a different club that is in much more stable circumstances? Can Wayne Rooney, the manager, build the same motivation and togetherness without the great adversity that he faced and the club faced, say, at Derby County? Because it may be the case that he manages a team that is much more likely facing promotion or winning a title. And I think there's a bit of a difference between managing a team that's in that sort of crisis, in that relegation zone, and managing a team that's optimistic and fighting for a title. I imagine there are different qualities needed for that. And while Rooney's experienced one extreme of that, he hasn't quite experienced the other extreme of that either. And yes, that other thing is that he really needs a supporting staff that actually support his weaknesses. Rooney can be, I think, a fantastic figurehead for a team of staff, and that's really what makes a good manager generally. But also having that tactical expertise around him will be very important. If I were Wayne and I was looking for that next job, although I think it's a bit of a stretch, I think Everton would be a really good suit for him. It's a club that's not fully stable, so it's in need of clear, concise direction and leadership, where I think Rooney himself will easily, command respect from other players. That would really suit his ability to have that steady head throughout the chaos that's around him. It's a stretch, I think, for a Premier League job, but it'd be a great gamble to take. Just as I thought of that club for him, I actually looked up what the odds were for Rooney's next job, and it turns out Everton's actually the favourite for Rooney to take, so maybe I'm right in that case. If it's not going to be Everton, then it needs to be, say, a Championship club that are looking best structured to get into the Premier League. Alongside that, also having that support staff either within the club or having an understanding of what staff he wants, and then bringing those coaches in with him as well. Either one of those options, I think, gives him the best position to go forward and improve on his abilities that he's shown at Derby County. So that's really my thoughts there on the abilities of Wayne Rooney as a manager, and with that, what club he should be moving to next and what job he should be taking going forward. Anyway, I hope there was something interesting in that for everybody listening. Thanks again for watching and listening as always. And if I don't see you this week, I'll see you again next week.